Alright, buckle up because today, we're talking about the battle that nearly wiped out the British monarchy. Imagine a world where there's no King or Queen of England, no Buckingham Palace, no coronations, royal weddings, or even the British royal family itself. Well, that almost happened. In 1651, England came dangerously close to becoming a monarchy-free republic forever. The war? The English Civil War? The battle? The Battle of Worcester. This wasn't just any war. It was a war where the King of England was put on trial and beheaded. A war that abolished the monarchy, stripped the crown of its power, and brought England's first-ever republic. For 11 years, England was a kingdom with no king, ruled instead by a man who refused to wear a crown. At one point, it seemed like the British monarchy was gone for good. But one man changed everything. A king in exile who made the ultimate comeback. This is the story of the war that nearly erased the monarchy forever. This is Infinitia Verity, and today we're uncovering the battle that almost ended the British crown. To understand how England nearly lost its monarchy, we need to go back to the early 1600s, a time when England's rulers were terrible at managing money and even worse at listening to their people. The king at the time, Charles I. And let's just say, he had no chill. Charles believed in divine right, the idea that kings were chosen by God and didn't have to answer to anyone, not even Parliament. Parliament, however, had other ideas. They wanted a government where the king had limits, where laws and taxes were approved by elected officials, not just a single ruler. And that's when things got ugly. Charles I did what any unreasonable ruler would do. He dissolved Parliament, ruled alone for 11 years, and taxed the people without their consent. Yeah, that didn't go over well. By 1642, England was split in two. On one side, the Royalists, people loyal to King Charles I, who believed in absolute monarchy. On the other side, the Parliamentarians, led by Oliver Cromwell, who wanted a government without a king. What followed was one of the bloodiest civil wars in British history. For 7 years, England was in total chaos. Battles raged, cities burned, brothers fought against brothers. By 1649, the unimaginable happened. King Charles I was captured, put on trial, and sentenced to death. And on January 30th, 1649, the unthinkable happened. A king of England was publicly executed. It was the first and only time in history that an English king was legally tried and beheaded by his own people. For the first time in history, England had no king. The monarchy was dead, or so it seemed. All right, imagine you're Charles II. Your father, the King of England, was just publicly executed by his own people. The monarchy, gone. Your royal claim, erased. England, once ruled by kings for centuries, was now under the control of a commoner, Oliver Cromwell. So what do? 2 options. Accept defeat and live in exile forever, or raise an army and take back what's yours. Charles chose option 2. But here's the problem, he didn't have an army. He didn't even have a country. He was living in exile, watching from afar as England became a republic. For nearly 2 years, Cromwell ruled with an iron grip. The monarchy was dead, and Parliament had no interest in bringing it back. But Charles had a plan. If he could rally support in Scotland, he might have one last chance to reclaim the throne. So, in 1651, he made his move. With the support of Scottish royalists, he raised an army of 12,000 men and marched south into England. His mission? Defeat Cromwell's forces, reclaim London, and restore the monarchy. But there was a problem. Cromwell was waiting. Charles was marching straight into a trap. And on September 3rd, 1651, the two sides met in Worcester for one final, brutal battle. If Charles lost, the monarchy would be gone forever. If he won, history would change forever. No pressure. The Battle of Worcester wasn't just a battle. It was the final stand of the monarchy. Charles II knew that if he lost this fight, he would never sit on the English throne. Cromwell knew that if he won, the monarchy would be erased forever. The stakes, life or death. The battlefield Worcester, September 3rd, 1651. It was a gray, stormy morning. The city of Worcester stood surrounded by rolling hills, with the River Severn cutting through the land like a jagged scar. On one side, Charles II and his 12,000 royalists, exhausted from their long march from Scotland. On the other, Oliver Cromwell and his 28,000 battle-hardened parliamentarians, fresh, well-equipped, and ready to crush the last hope of the monarchy. The difference in numbers? Overwhelming. Cromwell had not only twice as many men, but he also had elite cavalry, experienced musketeers, and a network of spies who had been tracking Charles's every move. Charles, however, had one advantage. His soldiers were fighting for their king. They believed in the monarchy. They believed they were fighting for God, for their history, and for their rightful ruler. But belief alone wouldn't win this war. The opening attack, the royalist charge. At noon, the silence was broken by the sound of cannon fire. Cromwell's artillery opened up on Charles's forces, sending cannonballs crashing into royalist defenses. But Charles wasn't going down without a fight. His Scottish Highlanders, fierce warriors who fought with broadswords and muskets, charged headfirst into Cromwell's army, screaming their war cries as they cut through enemy lines. For a moment it looked like they were winning. Cromwell's right flank collapsed and Charles saw his chance. He ordered a full-scale assault, personally leading his cavalry into battle. It was brutal, bloody, and chaotic. Swords clashed, gunpowder filled the air, and the fields of Worcester became a slaughterhouse. For a brief moment it seemed like Charles had a chance. But then, Cromwell made his move. He had been waiting for Charles to attack. As the royalists pushed forward, Cromwell sent in his secret weapon, his elite new-model army cavalry. They smashed into Charles's right flank, cutting down his men like wheat before a scythe. At the same time, parliamentarian infantry stormed the city, setting buildings on fire and cutting off Charles's retreat. The royalists were trapped. The battle had turned. By evening, it was over. 3,000 royalists lay dead. 10,000 more were captured. Cromwell's forces had complete control of Worcester. Charles realized he had lost everything. His army was destroyed. His supporters were either dead or imprisoned. The monarchy was gone. And now they were coming for him. Instead of surrendering, Charles II vanished into the night. He abandoned his crown, his armor, and even his royal identity. For 6 weeks he was a fugitive, hunted across England. He slept in barns, disguised himself as a servant, and even hid inside an oak tree to avoid Cromwell's soldiers. The price on his head? £1,000, a fortune at the time. At one point, Cromwell's troops were within feet of capturing him. But Charles was smart, resourceful, and incredibly lucky. After weeks of hiding, running, and surviving on scraps of food, he managed to escape to France. The monarchy was dead. England was now a republic, a country without a king. And Cromwell, he was now the undisputed ruler of England. For the first time in history, the monarchy was over, or so it seemed. The Battle of Worcester was supposed to be the end of the monarchy. The royalist army was crushed. King Charles II was exiled. England was now a republic. And Oliver Cromwell, he became the most powerful man in England. For the next 7 years, Cromwell ruled as Lord Protector, a king in everything but name. He banned public celebrations, closed theaters, and ruled with military force. Some people celebrated his leadership, others despised it. By 1658, Cromwell had absolute power, but then he died, and that's when everything fell apart. Without Cromwell, England descended into chaos. His son tried to take over, but he was weak, indecisive, and widely hated. The government collapsed. The people who had once cheered the fall of the monarchy were now begging for a king to return. And guess who was waiting? Charles II. In 1660, Charles II received an invitation from the very country that had killed his father. Parliament, desperate for stability, begged him to return. And so, after 9 years in exile, Charles II sailed back to England. Thousands lined the streets to welcome him home. the monarchy was restored. Charles had lost everything in 1651. Now, in 1660, he took back the throne. The Republic was over. But here's the question. If Charles had been captured in 1651, would England still be a republic today? Would kings and queens have disappeared from British history? What if Cromwell's dream had survived? History could have taken a very different path. So let's recap. A king was beheaded. England became a republic. The monarchy almost vanished forever, but thanks to one escape, one uprising, and one desperate parliament, the monarchy survived. And today, it still stands. But imagine, what if Charles had lost completely? Would England be a monarchy-free democracy today? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you love mind-blowing history, hit subscribe and stay tuned for more.